Video by Emmanuel Isaiah Smith.
Your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and today's date is Monday, September 29th, 2025. The time is 7:45 p.m., and I am in Meadow of the Lakes, Florida. The title of this lecture is Administrative Gangstalking. And I see it fit to do a lecture on the administrative nature of clandestine gang stalking. I oftentimes talk about gang stalking as a disruption mechanism, and that it is. I often talk about it as an attack mechanism, which is what it is. I often talk about it as a vehicular disruption of movement mechanism, which is what it is. I talk about it as a signaling mechanism. I talk about it as a workplace sabotage mechanism. I talk about it as a slander, libel, and character defamation mechanism. I talk about it as a political subversion mechanism. I talk about its governmental mechanisms. I talk about its technological mechanisms. I talk about its data interception and data tampering mechanism. And I talk about its germ warfare and disease spreading mechanism. All of which the above are true. Useful idiot gang stalkers from all four corners of the country participate in this, and to what end? Well, to have a sense of togetherness with other stalkers around them and to make their lives more interesting. I'd like to focus tonight on administrative gang stalking, or the administrative side of it, because I've found, particularly over the past year, that the administrative side of gang stalking is equally as deleterious, dangerous, and disruptive to human society as all the other mechanisms. So, a nice chunk of gang stalking is aimed at identifying, quote, suspicious people, or people who look out of place, or people who look like they just don't belong in that general vicinity, or people who look like the kind of person that other people around them need to be alerted about. That's where the signaling protocols come into place. The person could be dressed down and maybe in a fancy mall, and on first glance, stalkers that happen to be in the mall may look at the person and think, you know what, that person doesn't quite look like they could afford a home around here, or that person doesn't quite look like they could afford much, if anything, in this mall. Or that person looks like they might just be sitting around looking at women walk by. Maybe I ought to alert the other stalkers in this mall to that person's presence to sort of move them along a little bit. So the first signal against that person is sent out. Other gang stalkers in the mall who see that signal and recognize that signal as a suspicious person alert go and descend upon that person with various disruption tactics and annoyance tactics, with the hope that that person will get up and leave sooner rather than later. You see it so often in places that require means, money, increase, status to properly function in when you begin to see an abundance of these signaling mechanisms. For example, let's say a person, namely a targeted person, goes into a investment bank. Not necessarily your suburban banks or your urban banks where anybody can walk in and open an account. Let's use one of those big investment banks, the kind that you see downtown, the ones that are situated in a high-rise corporate building and are architectural marvels. Any gang stalker any targeted person, if you want to do an experiment to see how quickly the gang stalkers descend upon you with their disgusting antics, try this. Go to an investment bank downtown. For example, in Miami-Dade County, there are lots of investment banks. There's UBS, there's Wells Fargo, there's Chase. There are other investment firms like Merrill Lynch, Popular Bank, and others that have investment banks that are situated in high-rise, architecturally complex buildings. I challenge any targeted person who's listening to this to go into one of those banks, not necessarily to conduct business, but maybe to ask a few questions as to the requirements of opening an account. It could be a Roth IRA or a mutual fund or a certificate of deposit or any number of personal finance mechanisms, and see how quickly the stalkers descend upon you. Now, you don't necessarily have to go dressed in a tuxedo and a top hat with a cane with a gold handle and patent leather shoes on. You could go in jeans and a t-shirt or sweatpants and a hoodie, or just go dressed down. Rich people dress down too. They don't always walk around in three-piece suits or flowing gowns. They're not always wearing diamond jewelry and riding around in Ferraris. Sometimes people of means like to go where they go low-key. So maybe you are a wealthy person that just happened to dress down and walk into an investment bank to maybe get some brochures on the products and services offered. I challenge you to do that and see how quickly you're descended upon with thuggery and what I like to call shoe tactics. Not shoe as in the shoes on your feet, but shoe, S-H-O-O, shoe. Like you'd shoo away a stray cat who wanders onto your property. Shoo! Go away, get lost. A lot of gang stalking is aimed at shooing away targets from various establishments that they don't look like they belong in. So the scenario would look a little something like this. If you're a targeted person, when you come within 100 feet of that investment bank, looking as if you're going to walk in, your liaisons will immediately start sending signals to the stalkers in the general vicinity to intercept you as you make your way inside. So by the time you open the door, there will already be stalkers within 10 feet of you, ready to snoop in on why you're there. Let's say you take a look around before you speak to anybody. You admire the place. You walk around and get a good idea of the square footage. You observe the people coming and going. You observe the various employees at the bank. You observe the lighting and the architecture, the flooring and the furniture. You're just taking the place in. It's an impressive place. It's in a trendy location. You want to check it out. The first signal will result in a stalker coming within probably 10 feet of you. Not quite reaching distance to where they could reach their arm out and touch you, but probably around anywhere from 10 to 20 feet away from you. Just to crowd your space just enough to where their presence is known. This is the first domination tactic you'll see. This is the first tactic aimed at speeding you up to getting your targeted butt the hell out of the bank. Right? Because it's not as if these stalkers, these liaisons that are pestering you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are curious as to if you can actually afford to invest $10,000 in a mutual fund or a CD, or perhaps drop $100,000 in an individual retirement account. Stalkers already know ahead of time what your financial situation is, and they know the kinds of places that you can afford to go into. So if you as a targeted person go into an investment bank, your stalkers already know ahead of time that you probably aren't there to do business. So they'll begin using signaling mechanisms right away to make you as uncomfortable as possible, or simply get you out of the bank as quickly as possible. That's just how these stalkers are. They like to control your movements with their signaling mechanism and their dispatching of useful idiot gang stalkers anywhere you go. So within minutes of arriving in the investment bank, you will be approached within 10 to 20 feet, and a person they might not be walking around, they might just be standing there watching you or staring at you. Not so much as to frighten you, as much as to make you curious. Who is this person standing this close to me, and what the hell do they want? That's what will be going through your mind as this situation unfolds. Let's say you ignore stalker number one and you continue touring the bank and taking it in and just looking at it. Eventually, stalkers 2, 3, and 4 will come around, and now they're going to get a little pushy. Now they might start sneezing in your general direction, or burping, or belching, or coughing, or using other disgusting bodily functions to attempt to contaminate your air and make you feel even less welcome. Now, let's say you have superb tolerance, and you decide to stay in the bank and observe things a little bit more. At some point, the security guard will be signaled, and mind you, I don't think I've been into an establishment yet in Miami-Dade County where security guards were not plugged into signaling mechanisms. Security guards in these establishments that require means to do business in are very plugged in to gang stalking, very plugged in. And they know signals when they see them, and when they start seeing stalkers flinging signals at each other, then they go into high gear. And some of them wait on signals themselves. So after a while of you sort of lingering in the area, eventually you'll get not necessarily approached by a security guard, but a security guard will make their presence known to you. And mind you, you don't have to be causing a stir. You don't have to be causing a disruption. You don't have to be doing anything but minding your own damn business. Eventually, a security guard will approach you or come within 10 to 20 feet of you, as the previous stalkers did, and make their presence known and press you a little further as to why the hell are you here. Your outfit does not say investment banking customer. Your outfit says, I'm here poking around, and maybe I'm staring at the women that are walking around here, and we don't like that. As a matter of fact, we might call the police on you just for looking the way you do. Okay? You got to move fast, okay? Because these stalkers, they put these signals on you quick, and they put them on you in numerous capacities. It's not just one signal. Okay, 20 minutes in, you have been hit with 25 or 30 different signals, some by different people, some by the same person, over and over again, until you're ultimately approached by an employee personally. Can I help you with something? Chances are that employee has taken some sort of a signal as to approach you already. Just looking around, maybe I might request some information at some point. Oh, well, let me show you some of our packets and brochures, sir. What exactly are you interested in? Oh, I don't know. Perhaps a certificate of deposit. Oh, really? How much are you looking to invest, sir? Well, I'm not exactly sure. I wanted more information. Well, come right this way. And as the employee is leading you right this way, maybe the employee uses a belch or a cough, or perhaps they blow snot in the air as they're taking you to your brochure packet. All of which are made to annoy you and also send a signal to the other employees in the building. Let's get this guy the hell out of here as quickly as possible. So, you're asking for your certificate of deposits, the brochures and the various materials, and maybe a can of Lysol to spray the fumes out of the air as you continue your visit in this bank. Let's say at some point during this encounter, the security guard walks back up and sort of monitors your interaction with the employee, not because you've done anything, but because the employee has sent the security guard some sort of a covert distress signal. And yes, gang stalkers use distress signals. If not necessarily, they don't even have to feel scared or frightened. Perhaps they just want to bring attention to their self or bring attention to the fact that you're in their vicinity, and they would like to simply bring attention to you in case something strange or unusual happens. So at this point, you're starting to see what's happening. You're starting to see what's going on. You're starting to see the thuggery, the disruption. You're starting to see the light harassment tactics, the various other tactics that are being used. And you say to yourself, something about this visit to the bank is peculiar. And at some point, you may decide, you know what? I think this is something I want to report. I don't think I'm being treated very professionally here. So, at which point, you might ask for a brochure and politely end the interaction. And upon ending the interaction, you go to your computer or your tablet or your phone, and you go to the bank's website, and you contact the corporate office and say, you know what, I experienced some things in your bank at this address that I thought was rather peculiar. And here's why I thought it was rather peculiar. And I was wondering if my patronage is welcome there or not. Now, here's one thing that I found out about corporate offices. They don't particularly seem to care much for these stalker-type signaling mechanisms that happen at their branches and stores. As a matter of fact, if you explain the situation in detail to the point where the corporate office understands why you felt disenfranchised, they could possibly contact the branch manager and say, hey, there was somebody in our store or in our branch the other day, or earlier today, or yesterday, whenever you were there, and they're saying this, that, and the third happened, and that it may have discouraged them from doing business with us. Now, one thing that you will notice is that the branch manager, even if they were involved in the signaling mechanism, won't say something like, well, we were just using alert signals because the person looks suspicious. No, they're not going to put it to them that way. They'll just say something to the effect of, oh my goodness, I had no idea. We had no idea he felt like we were being rude or unwelcoming. We were just going about our business the way we go about our business with every customer. We're so sorry. We'll contact this person via email or phone and leave him a message and let him know that we value his business and we hope he returns again sometime. And a lot of times that's the end of the interaction. And obviously, if you were just going in there to see how quickly these stalkers started signaling one another against you, well, chances are you won't be back anyhow, but it's interesting to see these mechanisms at work, because it doesn't have to be an investment bank, okay? It could be a grocery store. You could go to your favorite grocery store. It could be a Piggly Wiggly. It could be a Walmart. It could be a Publix. It could be a Giant Eagle. It could be a Kroger. It could be a Winn-Dixie. It could be a Milam's. It could be any number of grocery stores. Go into one in the upscale neighborhoods. You got money to buy whatever, a sub sandwich, a bag of chips, something to drink, some candy, some paper towels, some cake, some lobster, some medication if you suffer from joint aches and pains and so forth. You're just going in there to do your regular routine shopping, but see, there's always that one employee, or maybe there's two, or maybe there's a dozen, that see you and say,
passengers, for your safety,
you know what, that man shopping in this grocery store looks peculiar. I don't think I've ever seen him in this grocery store before. Well, judging by how he looks, judging by some of the signals people are giving around him, I don't think that fella there lives in this neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure that guy lives anywhere upscale. I'm not sure this is the kind of person we want here. Because when you look around this nice, clean store, you see well-dressed families. They're buying $200, $500, $1,000 worth of groceries. They're interacting with each other. They look good. They look healthy. They look upbeat. Even the people who are here by themselves are wearing just enough jewelry to let us know that they're of status and means, or to shoes they have on are just nice enough
SW47th Street and
to let us know
142 Avenue.
that they cost. Some of them have $200, $500 haircuts that we can readily identify as expensive, and they just look like real nice, clean, intelligent, upright citizens of means. This guy doesn't really look that. He only has $12 worth of groceries in his shopping cart. All I see is a gallon of juice, some Twizzlers, a bag of Doritos, and looks like a loaf of bread. He doesn't look like the kind of shopper that would typically work here, and quite frankly, he doesn't look like the kind of shopper we want coming in here. So let's get some stalkers to descend on him and let him know what kind of community this is. Then they start flinging signals, and stalkers in the building start accepting them and returning them, and they descend upon the target and possibly cut him off while he's walking, or maybe they block him off, maybe they run into his shopping cart, or maybe they try to contaminate his air with a belch or something, try to make him sick. And that shopper eventually says, wow, I've always wanted to visit this grocery store in this particular location. It just looks so nice and pretty, but the people in this place have descended on me like a pack of vultures. I don't know if I'll ever come back here. Or maybe I'll come at an earlier time where there's less people around. Same thing could happen to you in a restaurant. Let's say you take your wife out to a nice dinner for your 10th wedding anniversary. And mind you, I don't know how many targeted persons are married. I mean, mind you, I'm assuming I'm not the only targeted person in the country, but it would be difficult to me to ascertain that most targeted persons are married, given the level of disruption that they experience day to day. I imagine it put an incredible strain on a relationship. Plus, there's the interpersonal relationship sabotage method that happens in gang stalking, where both parties, the male and the female, are oftentimes enticed to go into affairs with other people. Stalkers can seduce. Yes, stalkers destroy marriages. Yes, stalkers take signals to know whose relationship to disrupt and who to flirt with. So yeah, there's a lot of strain on marriages, but let's assume that this targeted couple is married. They decide to go to a nice, pretty dinner for their 10th wedding anniversary. Let's say they go to a beautiful seafood restaurant in South Beach, Miami. And they don't go often because they don't necessarily make the kind of money to go often, but this is a special occasion and the husband wants to treat his wife to a nice meal. They get in there, and they're dressed nice enough. There's something just about how they talk to one another that just doesn't look like rich folk. So maybe the greeter
next stop is
at the restaurant
137 Avenue and
takes just a little bit longer to seat them than they do their normal patrons. Maybe just look at them a little bit, look them up and down a little bit. Oh, isn't that a pretty couple? I wonder what they're doing here. A lot of the people that come in here are regulars. We got people that come in here and spend $200-$300 on a meal 10, 15 times a month. They become regulars. We know their face. And if you're going to buy dinner here, we know you got to have some money, because the entrees here are pricey, but they're quality gourmet dinners. So maybe at some point they go ahead and signal the most annoying waiter they have. How you doing, folks? So what's the occasion? The guy goes, well, it's our 10th wedding anniversary. I'm treating my wife to a nice dinner. Well, come right this way, sir. And when he says come right this way, he uses hard C's and S's so spit will fly out of his mouth at the patrons as an early manifestation of their disdain for them. How dare you come into this fancy restaurant just to pick through our menu and see what we have? You're not regulars. We probably won't see the two of you again until next anniversary, 10 years later.
Next stop is SW 42 Street and 127 Avenue.
So, the guy is a little weirded out by the situation, but he doesn't give it too much weight because he's with the love of his life and he wants to show her to a nice day and make it a memorable occasion, although it's already been memorable because the person seating them has already spit in their general direction. That'll make for a memorable anniversary right there. So anyhow, they're seated, they're given the menu, they order their stuff, they order their menu items, they order their appetizers, and they order their desserts. Because see, in these fancy restaurants, you order everything at once, your appetizer, entree, and dessert, and they bring them out incrementally. So, it's supposed to be a candlelight dinner. They bring out the entree, the appetizer was great, and the waiter conveniently forgets to light the candle. But this is supposed to be a candlelight dinner, so the man calls over the greeter and says, mind if we get somebody to light this candle for us? Oh, sorry. Somebody signals the waiter and he comes up with a blowtorch and lights it. The blowtorch is a defense mechanism. Targeted persons typically meet a lot of people who use these defense mechanisms against them. Like you'll go to a grocery store and ask one of the employees, hey, can you open that box of brawny paper towels? It's at the very top. And they go, oh yeah, gladly. And they pull out a big old Bowie knife and slice the thing open real quick and hard for you. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, I see your favorite movie is Rambo, based on that knife you just whipped out in front of my face, but okay, you feel threatened, you feel frightened, go ahead, open the box however the hell you want to. So this waiter comes out with a blowtorch because after all, these people don't look like they have much money, so let's let them know if they try to skip out on this dinner, we're going to tackle them so hard that it would make Lawrence Taylor blush. And make any defensive lineman in the NFL want to take notes. So you see the trajectory of what's happening, okay? These signaling mechanisms don't necessarily have to be against a person who is acting belligerent, okay? You don't have to go into the investment bank or the fancy restaurant and acting, as they say, a fool, or acting foolish, or acting in such a way that is threatening to the people around you. You could simply be going in to do business the same way anybody does business at any restaurant or any bank. But if they sense, or even if they ascertain that you don't belong or that you might cause a ruckus, well, they will descend on you with domination tactics and various other tomfoolery to try and get you out of there as quick as possible. And not only that, but make sure you don't return. So, why do I use the phrase administrative gang stalking in such a way? I use it in such a way because businesses have come to use various disenfranchisement mechanisms to ensure that only a type of clientele feels welcome at the business. And the type of clientele that they want at the business is not just the people who can afford to be there that day. They look to serve and accommodate the kind of person that they believe could do business at that particular establishment weekly or monthly, or has the means to be able to be a regular patron there as opposed to just a sporadic patron there. There are even doctors' offices and hospitals that use similar thuggery. You can go to a fancy hospital in a fancy part of town, and yeah, you have Aetna, you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, you have Humana, you have top-notch health insurance. You have the means and the ability and the capacity to pay your hospital bill through the insurance, but you just don't seem quite like the type of person that comes to that hospital often. And when I say often, I don't mean you're always sick or you're always injured. I mean often in the sense of, well, what hospital or doctor's office do you usually go to? It's certainly not these out here. I mean, we took your information at guest services to check you in, and we see that your address is 30 miles away from here. The zip code on your address is not anything close to this zip code right here in this particular vicinity. So that means you don't live in this type of environment. You don't live in a wealthy upscale neighborhood. You actually live in a neighborhood that is quite less with respect to the economic requirements to this neighborhood. But that's okay. Maybe you're just on this side of town and in this hospital because you're curious as to what such a nice, fancy, beautiful hospital like this is like. So you go in, they check you in at the front desk, they sit you down, and they say, "We'll be right with you in just a minute, sir." And then you're called by a nurse, and that nurse has already been signaled to the effect of, this person ain't from around here. As a matter of fact, this person, based on their job information, their employment information, can't even afford to rent an apartment in this type of neighborhood. But they do have medical insurance, and we're going to take care of them today, but maybe get them in the right direction, because we don't think they're too much like it out here that much, to where they're driving or commuting 30 miles from where they live to come out to this beautiful hospital. So you notice that they ask you your symptoms, and you say, well, I got a little tightness in my face, a little tightness in my chest, a little mucus in my throat, some congestion type of symptoms. And they say, oh, okay, I see. You might have maybe a sinus infection or some sort of bacterial thing going on. Maybe one of your stalkers got you sick somehow. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of airborne bacteria going around. We'll get you an X-ray and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on with you. Maybe we'll do a blood panel, see if you have any abnormal levels of bacteria in your blood. Maybe we'll get a stool sample, or maybe we'll get a saliva sample and test that and see if there's higher than usual levels of bacteria in your bodily excrements. And you say, okay, that sounds great. And you notice after they do the blood panel that they essentially put an IV needle in your arm, tape it to your arm, and send you back to the waiting area. And you think to myself, well, that's peculiar. They did the blood panel, and they put an IV in my arm.
Requested. Passengers,
but
for your safety, do not pass in front of the bus.
IV isn't connected for anything. The IV isn't connected to anything. I just arbitrarily have an IV needle hanging out of my arm, and they sent me back to the front to wait on the doctor to call. That is a technique and a mechanism, ladies and gentlemen. That is not about these people getting ready, these doctors and nurses getting ready to give you an IV. They're not going to administer to you an IV. You don't need an IV. You're not dehydrated. They put that IV needle in your arm and taped it to your arm and told you to wait in the front in case they got to snatch it out of your arm if you were to act hostile, violent, or belligerent. That is a tactic used to show this particular patient you are a peculiar patient, and we're not exactly sure what you're capable of, and quite frankly, we need a protective measure against you. And maybe if you were to ask the nurse or something, why do I have an IV hanging out of my arm and I'm not being administered an IV? Am I going to be administered an IV at some point in this visit? They might say something like, well, no, we're not going to give you an IV, but we've stuck that needle in your arm and taped it there in case we need to give you an IV later. I mean, you just did do a blood panel for us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've actually had that happen before, so I know exactly why they do it. Makes total sense to me.
Please stay seated until the bus comes to a complete stop.
If your zip code were a little closer to the hospital, they might not need to take that protective measure against you. So that is an overview of what you might describe as administrative gang stalking. It's a mechanism where you go into a place of business, and it could be any place of business, and you're immediately signaled or identified as suspicious the minute you set foot inside that business. And the goal is not necessarily to deter you from committing any infraction against the employees there or the customers there. The goal is to sort of deter you from returning if that is not indeed the type of store or the type of business that you frequent. So you could take another example easily. You could take a clothing store. I mean, you know, there are different types of clothing stores that different types of people of different means go to. For example, if you're a person of modest means and you need a suit or casual wear, or maybe business casual wear, you could go to Burlington Coat Factory. You could go to Target. You could go to Walmart. You might be able to go to K&G's. You could go to any number of big box retail stores that offers various types of clothes. You know, if you're more maybe upper middle class means, or if you have a little more to spend that day, you could go to somewhere like Men's Warehouse for for a nice coat and tie, or you could go to somewhere like Macy's and get yourself a nice three-piece, or perhaps you could go to your local J.C. Penney, or maybe you could go to your local mall and find a retailer that offers nice casual clothes, or maybe nice dress clothes, and make your purchase there. However, there are upscale haberdashers. You could go to, if you were looking for a more upscale look, you could go to Brooks Brothers, or you could go to Paul and Shark, or you could go to Scotch, or you could go to various other more high-end types of haberdashers, and get yourself a real nice tailor-made, custom-made suit, and pay a little more for it, because you're paying for the quality and you're paying for the brand. But if that's not the kind of place you frequent, the workers in the place will know that the very second they look at you. And it won't just be the workers either. They probably will have gathered some signal from a gang stalker that may have tailed you to the haberdasher and is looking to screw up your experience inside the haberdasher. And once they get the signal from the stalker, mind you, a lot of these haberdashers, they do take signals. And how does a haberdasher act on a signal? Well, they could screw up your measurements, or they could mess up the inseam in your pants, or they can take a needle and poke through it the wrong way and hit you, or they can try and stuff you when they try you on for some new shoes and stuff your toe in there in such a way that you stub your toe. Just what I'd describe as annoyance tactics. Just anything and everything possible to screw up your visit. This having been made possible by the signaling mechanisms that are being used in this day and age. And it's not even just places where you're purchasing accessory items like clothing or jewelry, or even a big box retail store like Best Buy, or somewhere where you would buy your electronics. High-end purchases can be disrupted. Okay, you could you could need a repair on a car, and the mechanics will have taken signals before you arrive at the car garage, as to how to proceed with your transaction. They could take signals from well-known stalkers and mess up your car, or overcharge you on the repairs, or do anything and everything they can to disenfranchise you as a customer. For example, let's say you have a real nice, pretty Toyota Tacoma, real nice, big, pretty pickup truck, and you need a routine tune-up on it. All right. Now, typically, if you have a newer model vehicle, typically you take it to the dealer for your tune-ups. So let's say in this case, the guy takes his Tacoma to the dealer for his car tune-up. If the man's a targeted person, chances are signals will be used before, during, and after the visit to ensure that his transaction is as faulty and as unpleasant as humanly possible.
Stop requested. Passengers.
They may even signal a mechanic
in front of the bus. Please stay seated until the bus
to
comes
damage
to a
your
complete
vehicle.
stop.
Perhaps putting a dent in it that wasn't there. Or maybe rather than just do a tune-up, they do your tune-up and then they damage your catalytic converter, so you'll have to come back sooner and spend more money. Or maybe they'll forget to tighten your oil cap good enough to where you think your tune-up is done and you drive down the street, your car's leaking oil, you have no idea, and halfway before you get to the house, your engine catches fire. All right? At this point, what do? You call the insurance company, you tell them what happens. They arrive on the scene. Let's say they send the fire department out. They could put out the fire if it hasn't already been put out. And no doubt, they're going to check your oil levels. If they come back with a reading of, well, sir, you have no oil, first thing you're going to think is, that damn mechanic screwed my car up, and I'm going to hold him liable. But again, that type of thing is hard to prove in a court of law. And that's the way gang stalkers operate. They like to instigate deleterious problems with people that are difficult to prosecute or difficult to identify in a court of law as the fault of the signaler. So if you can't get the car totaled out, or if you can't sue the mechanic for damages, you're just going to have to buy or lease a new car there, buddy. Not because you did anything wrong, but simply because you got tossed into this deleterious mechanism called gang stalking.
Passengers, for your safety,
and we're not able to remedy the problem before you had to start doing high-ticket repairs. Person's very
Next stop is
home life
40th Street and 67th Avenue.
can be sabotaged by this program called clandestine gang stalking. I've seen it to where targeted persons who are leasing a house get their house sold to a third party while they're still living there. And the landlord knocks on the door one day and says, "Hello, y'all. Thank you for your patronage, but I sold this house just yesterday, and you got 2 weeks to leave." What can you do? That's a rude gesture. It's an unprofessional gesture. It's a disgusting gesture. But if it's his property, he has the right to sell it within the confines of the law. Now, what you might do is look at state laws concerning the sale of real estate that a person is already inhabiting, and make sure that he's within that confine. If he's not, then you can get a civil litigator and sue him. If he is, then you got 2 weeks to leave the house. Ultimately, administrative gang stalking can be just as annoying and disruptive to your personal trajectory through time and space as the street level stuff. It is not difficult for seasoned stalkers to manipulate business transactions in such a way that the targeted person would be manipulated, disenfranchised, or put out of the way. Ultimately, all you can do if you find yourself facing these mechanisms over and over again is you can know your rights, you can know the law, and you have to be able to put some money aside in case you need a good attorney. Because some of these matters are executed in such a way to where you need an attorney in order to navigate the process properly. See, some of these stalkers will put you in a situation where you have to come out of your pocket in order to remedy the problem. And in those types of situations, it's possible that a civil infraction has been committed. And if you know your rights, if you learn your rights, and you come to the conclusion that a civil infraction has been committed, then that's when it's time to pool your resources, get a civil litigator, and take the offending party to court. You see, some of these persons that engage in these behaviors and activities against other persons are banking on the outcome of you either not knowing your rights or not having the financial resources to get an attorney to exercise your rights, particularly in a court of law. So you have to prove them wrong by first knowing that a civil infraction has happened, and two, having the wherewithal to go and get a private attorney if you feel you need to file a lawsuit. And at that point, it's up to the courts to determine if any kind of a fraud or any kind of a mishandling of your transaction has happened. Now, depending on the geographic region that you reside in, finding an attorney can be more or less of a challenge, especially if the area you live in is highly populated. If the area you live in is highly populated, you may have to shop for an attorney more often than you would if you lived in a less populated county. Unless you are very astute in business law or tax law or transactional law or civil litigation, if you feel an infraction has been made against you,
Next stop
you're
is
going to want an attorney.
Southwest 40th Street and Southwest 52nd Avenue.
And it doesn't take long for an attorney to file suit on your behalf if a transactional misgiving has taken place. If you tell an attorney, I want to sue this company or that company or this person or that person for these reasons, and the attorney believes that your claims are bankable, upon paying your initial, they usually don't take upfront payments. They usually just take a portion of the proceeds if you win. They could file suit the next day in state or federal court, depending on how bad the infraction is. If it's government resources that you feel disenfranchised with, it could be public transit, it could be a public library, it could be a public park, it could be your local police, it could be fire, it could be EMS, it could be any number of public works that you feel have disenfranchised you or committed some sort of a transactional infraction, and you can do a Title IX complaint, and those are